Hello, my name is Morgan and welcome back to the Content Collector's Derailed podcast. This week I am joined by Dan Scott. Dan is a co-founder of the charity Social Track and he's also someone who's instrumental in bringing about the Wishaw Pumptrack. Wishaw is an area just outside of Glasgow. It's often been near the top of the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivations, and this Pumptrack has had just a profoundly positive impact on the area. It's reduced crime, antisocial behaviour, all kinds of positive impacts that this thing has had, in large part thanks to the work that Dan has been doing through Social Track and also obviously his work in bringing the Pumptrack to the area. We talk about all sorts of different stuff in this episode. The challenges that organisations like Social Track face in getting continued funding for wages and not just for the actual bricks and mortar of the Pumptrack. We talk about a little bit about his background in mountain biking, why he feels it's been so good for him. We talk about how accessible and brilliant Pumptracks are, and how people can use them on lots of different things, and how maybe more than anything else in this sport, they're the things that can really get people into the sport, which has had such a positive impact on many of our lives, certainly my own. So it's a really great episode. It's a really good one in terms of, Dan's someone that's really doing a lot to make mountain biking a more accessible sport. We have so much respect for the work he's doing, and it was really, really great to sit down and talk with him the other day. So please stay tuned, enjoy this episode, and thanks for listening. Is that us? We good? Oh, I can't see the little red bit. Dan, how are you?
I'm good, man. Yeah.
I want to start just by asking you a little bit about your own background before going into kind of Social Track and Wishaw and everything else. So, and also your background in mountain biking. So, how did you get into mountain biking?
Years ago, I remember. I guess they call it the golden age, which is just means you're old. and with back in the day of Steve Pete and Eurosport and stuff like that, and seeing on the telly then, and Jason McCrory and all those guys, and the and chain spotting video as well. I remember being invited to a party at the pub. I was at the pub, and then closing time, and it was like, "Yeah, you're coming back to a party, man." And I went back to this party, and it was these guys who were into BMX and stuff like that, and one of them had a copy of Chain Spotting. And us, a wee bit inebriated, watched Chain Spotting VHS, and I don't know if you know what that is, guys.
I know. I thought you were talking about Train Spotting, and then I realized, it must be a mountain bike video. A clever name.
It's a classic one with Steve Pete and who you got on that as well, Rob Warner and all those guys. So it's nice. It's a classic. So yeah, you're talking to an old fart fan here.
How long ago was that then?
Oh man, 90s.
90s. And was that it was watching that got you thinking that looks cool?
It was kind of there in the background, and when I was a kid I rode BMX, and not like competition or anything like that. Everybody rode them, it's like when you watch Stranger Things and all those kids and stuff like that kicking about in bikes, that was us. We thought we were the Goonies. We were always going 10-mile trips in the middle of nowhere and on our bikes, and so we did that all the time. BMX was freedom for us when we were 10, and then when mountain biking came along, it was like, oh man, that's like a BMX for big guy, for adults.
For adults, yeah.
And it looks like it might be able to handle my fat arse. So it was so that was kind of that, and then sort of life got in the way, and I kind of forgot about it for a while, and that's. And then I became a dad, and I put on a lot of weight. My health wasn't great, and actually my sort of getting into mountain biking wasn't really that long ago. My son, who is now 20, and I know I'm so young, it's unbelievable. I have a son that's 20, I know, and but my son, who's just turned 20, as type 1 diabetic, and when he was diagnosed when he was really young. He was diagnosed when he was 3, and when he was about 7 or 8, I was just trying to get him more active. He's a gamer, still is a gamer, and I just wanted to get him more physically active. I knew that would help with his diabetes, and mountain biking was the thing that I wanted to do. And Wishaw, like a lot of towns in Scotland, is surrounded of. I'm just muting my phone.
No worries.
Surrounded with. I thought I'd done that already, and it's surrounded by lots of hills, lots of places to ride a mountain bike, and. So I thought, right, I'll go into mountain biking, and bought him a mountain bike and bought me a mountain bike, and which was an experience in itself. And yes, it was.
Getting the mountain bikes was an experience in itself.
Yes. My first mountain bike I bought as an adult was a Halford's Tracks full suspension. I believe there's still parts of it up at Carn Valley, and
Yeah.
I just remember going in the runway in Carn Valley and hearing ping, pong, ping, 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 as bits were flying off it and spokes breaking and all sorts of stuff. And I'm not a total elitist when it comes to bikes, but people need to watch that they don't spend good money after bad. And ironically, I taught my son how to ride a bike and all that sort of stuff, and he was just sort of went, "Oh, you're all right," and just. You can ride a bike and you ride his bike to work and stuff like that, but it really isn't any of it. But I kind of was like, I really like this, I quite like this, and I like, going to trail centres, riding local trails, all that sort of stuff. And it was a friend of mine who really pushed me, who's a super fit guy, ultra marathon runner, 40 mile plus marathons he runs, and at the time. I guess that's like a bit of a story in itself. I was 7 stone heavier than what I am now. Wow. So I'm a big guy, and I remember the very first time on that Halford's Tracks, on a local path that's just behind where I lived at the time, but it was about 100 metres long, and it had this slight upturn. And it took me a week every day going out and riding to be able to pedal that 100 metres, then go up that hill. Wow. It took me all week to be able to do that wee hill going up the way. I was so unhealthy and so unfit. And, since then I've done, the John Buchan Way and 72 mile rides and all that sort of stuff. But it was like, at the time, it was like such a big deal. And I've got diabetes, asthma, and I'm old. And so it was, it was a big deal for me. And I just loved the freedom. Absolutely love the freedom of it. It reminds me of being a kid.
That's exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, yep.
Sorry, I was going to say, in lockdown, we've been riding a lot, all the spots that we used to ride when we were kids. And we had this hill in Edinburgh, Storfin Hill. And I got into it, as a sort of young teenager, which was just the best time, really. And we always used to just go cycling up. We could go to this hill in Edinburgh and we'd build tracks and ride them. And it was a total freedom. That's what it was. And that's still how it feels, as an adult. It's exactly the same feeling.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's. I remember in one of your earlier podcasts, and you and Crystal were talking about building ramps with bricks and boards. And that was, I mean, I am a total, I hate heights, and I'm a total shitbag when it comes to drops and jumps. I absolutely despise them, to the point that I go, you guys are missing the great outdoors. Why are you so obsessed with doing technical stuff? You're missing all the great stuff, really covering up for the fact that I'm shitting my pants. But when I was a kid, I would jump 6-foot fences and stuff like that and build ramps, and plan your run up to this ramp to jump a fence and stuff like that, and doing 180s by mistake, and all that, and tail whips and stuff like that, and just we thought that we were the BMX bandits basically, and we were totally fearless. And I think there's an element of that as you get older, you that's harder to fight. It's harder to fight the fight or flight the older you get, especially the more injuries you get. I broke my clavicle and my rotator cuff last year, and I've struggled to do anything remotely getting down a hill since then. It's
Really?
just like terrifying, because it was one of those. I mean, they're always out of nothing, aren't they? Every crash that results in injury is always out of nothing, and it's always when you least expect it, and it seems to always be pedal strike with me. Pedal strike seems to be my thing, and it doesn't matter if I've got 165 cranks or 175. I still manage to fucking do it. So
hit the pedal off a thing.
Yeah. Three stumps and rocks. I'll find them. Yeah. So all the way to that tracks now. I've got a Stanton Switch 9er hardtail with a 160 mil of travel for some reason, and it's probably better off with a 100 mil travel cross country bike, to be honest, considering what I'm up to. But but I got this bike just recently, and I said to a pal of mine, I was like, I'm not sure how I feel about the bike. It's a lot of travel. It's no really the sort of thing for climbing hills and all that sort of stuff. And I'm no the fittest. I was like, I can't wait till we can get moving, and I'll go to Innerleithen and do that. And he went, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" It's like, your history in Innerleithen, and it's true. 5-6 times I went to ride there, and out of that times, 5 times I've had an injury and a pretty mad crash. And the one time that I didn't, it was in the dark and my batteries ran out, and I did the whole red section, not a single off or nothing, and every jump, everything. And it was like, maybe this is just all in my head, and seeing what's in front of me doesn't
make any difference.
For anything I say in the next half hour or whatever, I will never profess to be a good mountain biker or a good cyclist. I am not at all. What I am though is passionate about it. I love it.
You enjoy it, yeah, which is the thing.
And like I said, I'm 7 stone lighter. Exactly, than what I used to be. And I had a heart scare about 10 years ago, and had the whole scope, I can't remember, endoscope or whatever they call it, but the scope in the heart and the whole bit. And in fact, it wasn't 10 years ago, it was 6 years ago, because I was 40. And the surgeon said to me, it's like, "So are you quite an active guy?" It's a kind of a weird sensation, by the way, because you feel the scope in your heart. You've not got pain nerves in your heart, but you feel it knocking about. It's a
weird,
funky feeling, right? Yeah. And because you've definitely got valves in your heart, so you feel it knocking about. It's pretty funky. And he's showing me the picture. "Oh, well, there you go, Mr. Scott. There you are." And I'm like, "All right." And it was like, "So what do you do?" And it was like, "Oh, a mountain bike." And it was like, "Oh, that's great. How often?" And I was like, "Oh, I'll probably do about 50, 60 miles a week." It's like, "Oh, that's great." It's and you don't smoke anymore? "No." "Don't drink anymore?" "Rarely." And he was like, "Well, keep doing it, because you've got the heart of a 30-year-old. So keep going." And I was like, and I was worried. My dad died of a heart attack at 44. So it was like something I was like, I don't want to spend the next 4 years worried I'm going to kick it, So, and it was, it's been some good, I imagine.
It's been good for you. Absolutely.
It's been good for me. Aye.
Yeah. So, for those who don't know then, what is Social Track?
Oh, I guess I've just been talking about myself,
No, that's what I was asking. No. I was wanting to know a little bit about your background and stuff, and then I was gonna go. Right. We were gonna go into that. Was good. That was good.
Okay, cool. Social Track was came out of, I think, necessity, to be honest. A few years ago, there was the local authority here, North Lanarkshire Council, and one of their workers put an ad in the paper saying local community group wanted to support mountain bike skill zone that's going to be built in a school. And this guy who put this ad out, this community worker, had worked with a local organisation, and they had this the Wishaw mountain bike Club or something like that. Or in fact, they were the Motherwell Mountain Bike Club. And I had, which is the next town. And so I thought, right, okay, I'll see what this is. So me and a couple of mates turned up, and there was a couple of young guys there. And they basically said, right, okay, well, let's get a club. I thought this is a great idea, having a skill zone. And, and I'm thinking what you've got at Glentress, your skills area. And I thought if they build this in the side of a hill, that'd be awesome. And if it was in a school, I'd have loved that at school. And I thought that'd be cool. And basically said, right, we need a chair. And everybody looked about, and it was like, Dan, and I had just finished my degree at the time. They were like, Dan, you've got a degree, you can be the chairman. And I'm like, all right. So that's pretty much it. And then that didn't happen. But what did happen is that the local authority again got in touch with us. Certain things happened. We constituted it, became the Wishaw Mountain Biking Club. The local guys, there was two lads that were 16 who turned up to the meeting as well, who were local mountain bikers, and they named the club. And they really, this might seem like nothing, it was a big part of what became Social Track. It was like, okay, it was like, so the Wishaw Mountain Bike Club then. And I went, no, let's make it the Wishaw Mountain Biking Club, because that way it's about the people who ride and not the bikes.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
And I thought, I just finished my social work degree, and I'm like, this kid doesn't know what he's just said. That's huge. That's a huge change in direction. And it's why we became a community group. It was like looking at kids that couldn't afford a bike, and at the time we hooked up with, that's when I met Neil Morrison, who I work with now in Social Track. At the time he was working a bike shop in Glasgow, and he hooked us up with Saracen, and they gave us a bunch of Saracen hardtails at the time. And obviously they paid for them, but they gave us a discount on them, and we got them. They were absolutely brand new. We got them before they were in reviews for magazines and stuff, which was awesome. And they made a big deal for when the club went up to Fort William for the World Cup. They made a big deal when we were up there and got us all. We done a test ride. They treated us all great. And I think that sort of idea of, if you're positive enough and you can actually think of ideas that might actually help people, you go for it. So
was Social Track then, it came out of the project, like the Wishaw Pumptrack project, or was it already there? No,
it came out of the Pumptrack. It came out as a necessity. It was obvious during the Wishaw Mountain Biking Club time that having guys just volunteering wasn't enough. The need was so massive. I remember getting 40 emails in like 1 week from different schools and different clubs and different youth groups. And I was like, there's no way a volunteer organisation can really do this. How are they going to go get their mountain bike leader training? How are they going to you can't expect people to turn up to a school 5 days a week and then not pay them, and it's okay if it's somebody who's in a position where they want volunteering, but you can't do that. That's not sustainable. You need to do something. So it was obvious that an actual company needed to get together, and Neil was kind of tired of all he actually said to me, I was like, I've just sold a $5,000 carbon fiber bike to a 12-year-old. It's like, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of this whole marketing bullshit, and people not real, it's like, a kid didn't need that. A kid needed a BMX, If it's like, he needs to go actually learn how to ride a bike properly and enjoy himself. Doesn't need his dad's swallowed the Kool-Aid and all this crap, and it was like, and I says, well, dude, we're doing this thing, and the council's just come and ask us if we can build a pump track, which eventually what happened. The school project fell on its ass, and then they came back to us and said, actually there's a group in Craignook, which is the part of Wishaw where I went to school, and it's like, and they want to build a pump track, and I was like, whoa, that's a big deal. And I thought, we're really going to need some sort of organisation. So, and it was like, it happened all at the same time. They were looking for this positive thing. I was looking to get involved with it. I didn't know I knew the community side and the social side. That was my background, with social care and social work and community work. We were talking before we recorded about having passionate mothers. My mother was a passionate community person. She loved all the community events that would happen. tons of stuff. You know, she would bake and paint murals and all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of rubbed off on me as well. But I care about the community, and it sort of came at the same time as Neil was pissed off with this, like, you know, where is people actually doing this because it's fun? It just doesn't seem to be anywhere. You know, it's always about the flashiest thing rather than actually just enjoying your riding. And I says, well, dude, he was struggling with different projects that were happening as well, and he had some great success with Stirling Skate Park, but he was struggling with some BMX projects in Glasgow. And I was like, dude, so you're constantly hitting your head off the wall, and these people want it to happen. Why don't you come to Wishaw with me and see if we can get something going? So about 7 or 8 name changes later, eventually we became Social Track, and we got a grant to start off from First Port, which got us our first order of gear cable and brake cable and all that sort of crap, and to fix these Saracens. Because that was the other thing, is like, how do we fix all these Saracens that we've got? I can't remember. I think we did about 15 Saracens or something. And I was like, how have we got to fix all these bikes? You know, how have we got to get all the parts? And obviously Neil had these qualifications in SciTech and all that stuff. So it was like, right, well, you can fix these, Neil.
So it sounds like it was like there was a whole bunch of things came together like just at the right time. You just done a degree in a really relevant, you know, subject. Neil's just having this epiphany about mountain biking and accessibility and stuff. And then the community is actually, I assumed that it was, you know, you would have like fought hard for it, you know, almost like to get the funding, to get the community, you know, to want something like that. But it sounds like they actually approached you with it.
That happened later. Later. What you have, and I mean, if anybody's watching this, and I'm assuming people who will be watching this because they want to build a pump track and they want stuff to do. Now we're at the moment, Social Tracks at the moment now, where we say, look, we'll come along, we'll find funding, and we'll plan your program for you, because we've got, you know, 6 years of experience now. We know even the bikes that work, never mind what bikes. We know what bikes, brands, everything that work. You know, we have about 12, 13 distribution accounts, you know, now, and sell everything under the sun, from NS bikes to BSDs, BMXs, you know. So it's like, and scooters and skateboards and all that jazz. So there's that total retail element of what we do. So we now actually, as part of our job, is consultancy now, and go and actually consult with different groups that try and do stuff. Because what's really hard is getting funding for what's called the soft stuff, the actual, you know, paying wages, paying people to be there, paying face-to-face stuff. That's so hard to get. I mean, the Wishaw Hillwood pump track was a £250,000 project. It included not just the track, but also the Wishaw Hillwood itself, and different various stuff. And the Sustrans path that now is built right next to it was £600,000, this active travel path. But try to get £2,000 for somebody to sweep that path is like hen's teeth. And that's the bit where you really need to work. I mean, like right now, we've got an Easter program running.
Is that because it's seen as like it's not going to end? You know, that it's continuous, you know, wages as opposed to just one-off. You know,
yeah. I think what it is the revenue funding. I think that, you know, there's an element of where is the money going. You know, people want to see something. It's also very marketized. You know, it's everything is based on what can you sell and what can you buy. That's just the nature of, you know, we could go into a much longer debate about capitalism than what we could about mountain bikes. And but you know, the difference basically is, I mean, if I give you £1,000 and say, you know, go invest this on something, you'd probably invest it on something that you could actually physically hold. But what is harder to do is to spend that £1,000 on people, invest in people, you know, whether that be training or equipment for them, accessibility, all that sort of stuff. So it's much harder for stuff that's kind of like in the ether, you know, something that you can't physically touch. It's much harder for people to visualize what that'll be, what that'll look like. That doesn't mean it's any cheaper. But if somebody wants a Velo Solutions pump track and says I've got 80 grand to spend on a pump track, well, they spend their 80 grand, and then there's a nice, lovely bit of asphalt that's going to be built with some nice, some red stripes on it, and it's going to look awesome, and it's going to look like 80 grand. If you paid 80 grand to pay, say, 3 members of staff, it sounds like an awful lot of money, but 3 members of staff, it's like, are you going to find, is that 26 grand a year? Are you going to be able to find somebody who is qualified enough, who's good enough, who is going to accept 26 grand a year? You might not. Exactly, and that's and that sounds like a huge amount of money, but yeah, it's harder to get. It's also that you're fighting against so many other different types of organizations for money. There's limited resources, but and it's all outcome based. They all want to see something for the money.
Yeah.
So that's all sort of tough, but that's all down to how you're able to report all that stuff. The child interrupting me.
Don't worry about it.
And it's he's found the chocolate pancakes that you replaced. And so it's all about that outcome based. They want to see something for the money, and that's fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, whether that's, can I help you, Luke? So whether that's the lottery or Children Need or any of these sort of guys, they want to see something for the money.
Oh, that's interesting. So this is actually something that is sort of across the board in a lot of these kind of projects, like including these ones they watch. They don't want to just pay someone to help someone with all that money from Children in Need. They want to see a thing at the end of it. That's interesting. And
sometimes you got to think of what they are as well. The lottery is really a tax. So who involves the tax? Well, it's the government, right? So what the government, what do they want? They want to look good. So are you going to make them look good, or are you going to make them look shit? You make them look shit, they're not going to give you any money. Children Need a TV. Are you going to produce something that they can put on TV?
It needs to be entertaining. Yeah.
It needs to be entertaining. It needs to be something that you can do. And I'll be honest, that's how you write what's already there. It's already looking at what you've got and saying, the stories you've got, whether it's a kid in poverty in Wishaw who is riding a bike and then gets to ride the Red Bull race. That's a story, and you can see, that particular story, if you took Lewis McDonald, who rode for Social Track during the Red Bull race, he got sponsored by Colony BMX. He got some TSG sponsorship as well for the race, and he was featured in the Red Bull video for it. Now, that's kind of a good example of what you're taking. Now, what was Lewis in the background of that? What you've got, Lewis had a background story because he nearly died from an epileptic seizure that put him in a coma. So he had a background story. He had something to say, and he had fought against that. And the thing that he lost motor skills and all that sort of stuff. How did he get it all back? He rode a pump track, And he was big into. He's got a Giant Fury as well and all that sort of stuff. So he was into mountain biking and BMX as well. So there was the whole story there. He's just what they see. And behind him, there's another 80 kids, who are actually probably in a worse position than what Leo was. Okay, dying's not a great position, but like financially and support, he's got parents who support him and all that sort of stuff. So you've got the other side of that, and it's trying to make it accessible, but it's trying to make it all look good. I've got to say that Velo Solutions are awesome at that. Awesome, they've got great.
Is this one of the things, that you're learning through Social Track, is like playing the sort of funding game, I suppose, to some extent? Like, it's not just about actually doing a good job in the community, it's also about securing more funding, which means you have to make it look good as well.
It's a job in itself.
Yeah.
Job in itself, because there's even just the applying for all these funding. It's going and looking where the funding is. It's applying for this funding, and we've even spoke to groups that, I've spoke to groups from all over the world. I've had phone calls from Canada and from Eastern Europe and Ireland and all over the place asking, we've seen what the Wishaw Pump Track does. We've seen you videos with you and them, blah, blah, blah. And then I remember there was one group and they had actually a stack of cash, and they phoned me, and it was, in fact, it was Neil they phoned. And Neil's from a different background from me. I was brought up in Craignick. He wasn't. He brought up a nice big goose, and but they phoned him and they said, we'll get this plan for this and plan for that, and we're going to do this. And they said, if we spoke to your local community council. Now, every town has a town council, every village has a village council, all that sort of stuff. And the guy said, no, why would I? And Neil went, dude, there was a year of talking to the community council before there was even a spade in the ground. If you're not talking to them, you're not getting it. If you're not building those connections, if you're not building those partnerships, it's not going to happen. And a lot of people they'll go, oh, well, we can do that. Can you? Do you really want it? It's like, I'm in, and I despise, this is fine, but I hate Zoom meetings. I hate meetings with another 100 people and they're all in Zoom, and I absolutely despise them, and it's my life at the moment. And but you need to go to those meetings, 8-10 meetings a month. Wow. It's like, because you've got to get that, you get to get all these people together, and that's also how you get funding. Because you can't just say, because it will also say who's going to be your partner, who are you going to deliver this with? Just me. It's not happening. If you can say, well, actually, like for Wishaw Wood, it involves Made for You and ML2, Craignick Community Council, in fact, there's 4 local elected members, so 4 local councillors involved. You've got, obviously the lottery are funding it at the moment, but you've got these different groups that are involved that are all around about it. You're talking to different groups and different people. We work with the community learning and development team from the council. We speak with social work, we speak with schools.
And this is because, as well, I'm just sorry putting everything together just myself.
Feel free.
So the pump track, to get it in the first place, you had to secure £250,000 worth of funding. Social track, which is actually providing bikes, making it accessible, doing other positive things in the community, getting the community sort of support, is a full-time job, requires a couple of full-time jobs, a few full-time jobs maybe. And so you're saying getting that continued funding for a social track is the thing that's hard. So it was easier to get the funding for the actual pump track, and actually having the social track to go along with the pump track, which I'd imagine is the real kind of, well, it's a combination of the two things, but the social track is every bit as important for the community as the pump track itself. That funding is harder to actually secure.
I mean, I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet, if only, and here, but the actual people there who know this stuff, who can work with people, young people, work with different backgrounds, all that sort of stuff, is probably more important, because at the end of the day, you could do what we were talking about. At the end of the day, we could build ramps and put them on bikes and just have fun. You may have done that now and again, and it's but you need to have those skills of actually talking to people. My funny story is again Neil's story, but I remember we were meeting from someone from Glasgow City Council, and I don't know how if I get away with this one, but it still makes me laugh. And we're meeting from somebody at Glasgow City Council, and they were talking about how they wanted to build pump tracks and all this different stuff, and they saw the stuff that we'd been doing in Wishaw, and they met with us in Acosta. And one of the things they said was like, we actually kind of struggle to get coaches that know how to talk to the kids that we want to work with. And I said, and I knew I was talking to someone who'd done their community ed degree, right? So I put on my social track, my social work hat, and said, yes, well, it's all about understanding people and being able to communicate, and obviously you're using your listening skills, and you got to be able to understand that they're going to use language that you may not be used to, and you've got to be able to use that language back. And Neil, who's the posh guy, turned around and said, well, basically, you need to be able to be called a cunt and know when it's all right to call the Waynes a cunt back. Exactly. And I can't believe we got away with that.
That's funny.
But it's true.
Yeah.
And it's like, I have seen, there has been people from the establishment, the cycling establishment come to the pump track, and they have stood there in total shock, like, and it just makes me think, how would they handle wins for Castlemilk? How would they handle kids in Pollock? How would they handle, kids in Craignook? They just can't handle that. They'll see a 6-year-old, with a total gut mouth, and they don't actually realise that the kid's not swearing at them. It's just how they speak, and so the people skills don't always go with the
this mountain bike skills. Definitely not.
So
for those who don't know, though, because I'd imagine there will be quite a lot of people who aren't familiar with the Wishaw story or the incredible success that it's, the incredible positive impact that it's had on the community. Yeah. So for those people, what impact has this pump track, along with Social Track, had on the Wishaw community?
Well, the community itself, the Craignook used to be where Ravenscraig Steelworks was built, and it was pretty famous. It's been knocked down for 20 years or however long it is now, but 25 years I think, and it was already a rough area anyway, Craignook and Wishaw, and basically the typical post-industrial story, lots of poverty. Really, there's a thing called the Scottish Index of multiple deprivation, which is scores lots of things like life expectancy, infant mortality, all lots of cheery stuff. And at one point, Craignook was 5th in Scotland, and it put it into the top 20 in the whole of Europe. And that was a long time ago, just after the break of the Soviet Union. It was still doing better than places that had just went through a civil war, and doing worse than places that had been in a civil war. And so I've always been passionate about trying to see what I could do, and I'm not the only one, by the way. It's not like I was some sort of saint. There's thousands of people, and we couldn't do it. The pump track wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the people in Craignook. That's right off the bat. Never mind what me and Neil or anybody else has done. And so I remember the first meeting we were at after the pump track was built. There was a local community learning development officer, and that title's used in different name, different councils, but basically the guys from the council who are in charge of community investment, and he was sitting there and mouth on the floor, just pure. But that's the whole meeting, and and we had to give a presentation. And so we gave a presentation, done what we were doing. It's a great Ali Clarkson video where he's at Wishaw Hill with Pump Track, and and he says in the video, it was like right in the middle, pure gold. I even said to him once, I was like, dude, I'd have paid you $1,000 to say that. It's like, he says, if you're in a town council or a community council and you've got some money to spend, build a pump track. And I was like, dude, that's gold. And so the impact, I'm at this meeting, done this presentation. The year previous, Craignook had 74 secondary fires, but 80% was wheelie bins getting set on fire. It had 9 violent crimes. It had something like 60 antisocial behaviour stuff. 3 months after the pump track's built, 4 secondary fires. No serious assaults. No antisocial behaviour. Gone. Just gone. We're like, it must be an anomaly. And this guy's joined the floor. He's like, this £250,000 project in 3 months has paid for itself.
I remember hearing about that, and I mean when it just had been built. I remember, I think it was Crystal probably telling me impact it had. And I've used it so many examples, talking to people about, what to do in these kind of communities. And it is like, this is an example of what an incredible, like having something that actually just is fun. And, and like I think you did a great job as well. I was listening to your developing mountain biking in Scotland interview of actually creating like an ownership. So it's not just like they're getting it, but then the community also feels like, and all the kids feel like it's theirs, and so they're looking after it. And I think it was just the impact that it had is mind blowing.
Like the urban studies guys that came out and said, "Can you show us the graffiti on the pump track?" And I was like, "There isn't any," and like touch any wood. But I mean, like 5 years later, and there still isn't any. The kids just don't do it.
How much of that do you think is like how you were right from the start? So like there's the pump track itself, which is fun and everyone can use on there, all sorts of different things that are accessible, and you don't need an expensive mountain bike to do it. But how much of that, like of the impact, do you think is to do with yourself and the people you're working with and Social Track, and like actually instilling that sense of ownership and making it something like actually maximizing the impact that it's having?
Personally, I think it's everything. I think it's that when they realise that the track is theirs, and it's and it helps people being there. I mean, just certain things that. The other thing as well is that you need to give young people some credit. They're usually far more intelligent than people will give them credit for. They're usually far more far more courageous than what we are. I mean, it's not so much a deal in Edinburgh where you guys are from, but in the west of Scotland, sectarianism is still a big deal. The Glasgow Rangers, Glasgow Celtic carry on, right? And can you tell I'm not a football fan? And those guys, the kids at the track, it was the kids themselves that said we don't talk football at the park, at the track. It was them that said that, and no me. So it was their ownership of it, and so I think that's.
Do you think that's one of the because I've always looked at football, and football's an incredible sport, is it's so accessible, and that's why it's one of the reasons it's such a big sport.
Yeah, probably.
But especially as you say on the west coast of Scotland, where there is this sectarian element to it, how do you think one of this, like, putting in a football pitch or these sorts of things with football, do you think at times, I think your co-founder Neil, Social Track, he was saying something like, a lot of times the football projects can be the atmosphere is a bit more aggressive and a bit more kind of just a different atmosphere to what the pump track is. How do you see the sort of like differences there between like football and the pump track?
You don't get this sort of alpha male sort of nonsense at the pump track. I mean, you do it to an extent. I'm sure you've seen Crystal Gallagher at a pump track.
I've seen him.
Try to be the boss.
Certain his dominance.
I've even heard them go, "Who do you think he is?" It always makes me laugh, man, when you get that, and you always get that. I've heard the same about Mark Ducat as well. So it's like, so it's nothing new to me, but you don't get that same. It's sort of like, I think what's great about pump tracks is that, the great divide isn't mountain bikes and road, isn't mountain bikers and roadies. The big divide actually is mountain bikers and BMXers. That's the big divide, and it's only when you actually show a mountain biker what a BMXer can do, they go, "Oh, that's pretty cool," and vice versa. It depends what you show them. If you show a BMXer some Darren Caskell stuff, they go, "That's pretty cool," and they can see where the links are. And that's the great thing about a pump track is that what has came to pump tracks, and I think that is where Neil comes into it. Neil was a semi-pro skater back in the day, and I think what has came to it is that more accessible sort of. If you go to a skate park and you're trying to learn how to ride a skateboard, once you find, if you're at it and people see you keep falling on your ass, right? See, when somebody sees you go a distance and then you stop and you go, "Oh," they'll high five you. It doesn't matter if they've just done a 540 or something like that. It doesn't matter. Whoever it is, they'll high-five you, you know.
Totally.
I've been in the same skate park as Alec Donaghy, the X Games, you know, BMX winner. And the guy, you know, did a simple thing, and the guy was like, cool, man. You know, it's like, and I think that's the thing that's hammed at Pumptracks, is that sort of like people just being super positive for other people, just happy to see people doing well. It comes to the pump track, and that doesn't happen in FITBA. FITBA's constantly competitive, you know, and it's like there's a whole pile of people that if you've got any self-esteem issues, and that's hand in hand with poverty, granted, so is violence. But I mean, it's like if you get self-esteem issues and somebody says to you, somebody, you know, goes, oh man, that's awesome. And I mean, I got a video today of I wasn't at the pump track today, and somebody was sending me videos of some of the kids riding, and we've got a guy, Vinny Connolly, who teaches skateboarding, and anytime somebody's in this video where somebody's come past and it's just like riding a skateboard or a scooter around the berm, and all I can hear is Vinny in the background going, yeah, every time it happens. And it's like, you know, I had pals that played professional football and all that sort of stuff, and I was always the fat guy. I was always the guy that was put to the side, and I was told I was shit and all that sort of stuff, and that never happens at a pump track. So I think that's what's cool about a pump track, is that it's took that sort of cool sort of skate ethic that comes with it, it's brought it in, and that's not in football at all. You know what I mean? I've been at a Motherwell game and shouted to be a player. So I mean, it's like, you know, because I'm so much better than the guy, you know, and that doesn't happen at pump tracks. You know, I think that same sort of etiquette is there, and you see it at all of them. You know, you see it at Skelf, you see it at Hoyk, and it's the same. I've been to other pump tracks and that, just at Pumperston. You know, you go to Pumphy, it's the same. It's a great atmosphere. The time I was in Inverness, I was there at 8 a.m, and we were the only guys there, so that doesn't count. But you know, at Hoyk, the atmosphere was the same, and that's the thing. You know.
What do you think, though? The difference between the pump tracks, because I live just next to the one at Skelf, and every time you're there, it is just as you say. There's something. I think there's everyone. They're just this amazing thing that everyone can use, and so there's kids on it, and there's adults, and everyone. The atmosphere is always great. What do you think the difference? You mentioned as well in that same interview with Developing Mountain Biking in Scotland, like there's a lot of unused skate parks in Scotland, and you obviously chose to go down a pump track road as opposed to a skate park road.
Yeah. And
also skate parks can be, I've just in my own experience, they're more intimidating, you know, kind of environments and stuff. What do you think but therefore a more accessible thing, or I suppose you can use anything on a pump track, but
a more affordable thing.
Therefore scooters and skateboards, which are much more accessible and affordable to most people than pump tracks, which have come from the mountain bike kind of community. So why do you think there is this? What do you think is that difference between a skate park and a skate park's atmosphere and a pump track? Not to say that, I mean, skate parks quite often have, you know, good atmospheres, but pump tracks seem especially kind of friendly and
yeah, I think at the moment it's probably just popularity. I think because there's and also I think there's a bit more, depends what pump track you're at, because some pump tracks completely ban scooters and no one likes the scooter kids and all that sort of stuff. You know, the mountain bikers that have turned up in their DJ bike or whatever, they don't like the scooter kids. You know, the BMX guys don't like scooter kids, blah, blah, blah. And that can be different tracks. But the tracks I've saw, especially Hoyk, and you could tell me different at scale, right? I don't know. But what I've saw is that because scooters are so accessible, we even done it, by the way. We actually built the most expensive scooter we could. We were thinking, right, how do we make the Santa Cruz V10 of scooters? You know, how do we make a 10 grand equivalent of scooter? And at retail, it was 800 quid. You know, so you're talking about accessibility. It's huge difference. You know, it's like a tenth of the price. You know, a 200 quid scooter is all you'll ever need, you know.
Totally. Yeah.
So you know, the equivalent of like 3 grand trail bike, you know. And so it's a completely different game. So you get all these kids there, you know. I think that's the point I'm trying to make here, is you get all these kids, but there's a bit more Pumptracks. There seems to be a bit more acceptance than what there you go. You go Kelvin Grove, and you've got the BMXers and skateboarders just wanting to gang up all these kids and all their parents, you know. Whereas at skate parks, I think there's the Pumptracks. Sorry, there's that sort of like, we know the scooter kids are going to be there, and there's just that bit more of, before COVID, you would be a lot more sharing the bikes, you know, and you would always have one guy that was like, hate fucking scooters, hate them. And then eventually you see him on one, you know? And I think it's just a little bit more open. It's still quite new. You know, skaters don't really know how to deal with it. And
there's maybe less as well. There's like at a skate park, there's more of a kind of hierarchy, an obvious hierarchy and an obvious kind of pecking order to things that you know quite quickly, you know, upon arriving, where you kind of like slot in on that. Whereas Pumptracks, it's maybe a little bit less of that.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, and nobody really knows, you know, who's who and all that sort of stuff. And there's a lot less of that, isn't there? I mean, there's you go to if you go to anyone, you see the guys who want to be as quick as they can doing a lap, you know, at the pump track. You see the guys who want to do tricks, and you see the guys who just want to just be there, hang out, and just have fun. I say guys, but I mean everybody. And it's like whether that's, you know, kids, women, whatever, it's everybody. They're there for a specific sort of thing. I just think there just seems to be a much more. I mean, me and Neil were talking about this today. Neil was isolating due to COVID, so he missed the first week of our Easter. And I've been saying to him, it's like, man, the numbers are tough to deal with. It's just like so many kids just now, and it's so many volunteers, so many people want to be there, help out. But it's just buzzing just now. It's just humming. It's just like, it's going so well, and the atmosphere's just awesome.
It's amazing.
And so like, all right, cool. And then he did his first shift today, and he's like, oh, there, you know, he's like, oh, it was amazing.
Totally.
It was like, the kids were just great. Oh, let me tell you about this kid. Let me tell you about what this mum said. Let me tell you about what this dad did. Let me tell you about the guy who was volunteering. You know, and it was, I think there's just that sort of, there's something, I think you're right in the physical thing about a pump track. You don't need a great deal of skill to actually ride a pump track. It's not like a skate park. It's not where, you know, you're standing on top of something 8 foot high that's got 85-degree angle that you're looking at it and you're like, I'm supposed to drop into this fucking thing. You know, it's like, you know, I like my front teeth. Thanks very much. Yeah. And it's like, whereas a pump track it is intimidating for people for the very first time. I remember the first time I saw Skelf, I was like, man, and Wishaw's got a lot deeper burns than what Skelf is now, you know. But I mean, the first time I saw Skelf, I was just sort of like, dude, how do you even start this? And I can't remember his name now. Scott, who was the Masters BMX champ, he jumped on a bike on the opening day and just like, you know, 20 seconds or something like that around the thing, and then back, you know. And it was like, but just something about just give it a go.
Yeah.
You just give it a go and you'll no die, you know?
Totally, yeah. It's easier dropping in, you're right, in a pump track is a lot
I think
easier.
to butt in, so yeah, listeners, I have been listening and I'm here. One of the things I notice is a big difference between pump tracks and skate parks is you can't like dominate a zone of this pump track like people do in the skate park. They like sit in session like one feature all day. Whereas at the pump track, you all sit together at one bit, and you know all the kids have to ride past you, and you know everybody sort of is forced to get along if they might not have before, and it definitely like you can't get annoyed at someone going around the pump track because like that's how you do it. You go around, you know, whereas almost at the skate park, so much more interpretation. People I see like they kind of get annoyed because they're like, well, I want to do it this way and you want to do it that way, you know, whereas the pump track, it's like, no, you go around and that's kind of about it.
Yeah. I mean, you do have fights about direction and it's on balance, but bikes and all that sort of
Well,
jazz. You got all stuff. You do get all that stuff. But yeah, you're totally right. And the big aspect for us at Wishaw was having the space to actually, there was a social space, and yeah, that's the social aspect of it. I think is a massive factor, and yeah.
I was gonna ask, do you see much like movement from people sort of finding maybe a love for cycling or sport just generally, or whatever, skateboarding, scootering, through the pump track, and then carrying that on to to other things, to other sports?
Yeah. I mean, Leo himself. I mean, we've not really seen Leo in a while, obviously with COVID and stuff like that. But COVID got COVID. Leo, his dad's actually like Olympic, like a Commonwealth level, Olympic level judo instructor, and he got really into combat sports, and so he and he was always injured, which is the nature of that. So it was kind of, he had to choose one or the other, and he wanted to get down the combat sport. But I think so that's one example of that. The grit and determination to be able to do a 360 out of the fly out at Wishaw was, when he was struggling to hold a pendle and all that sort of stuff, is a big factor in that. I think as well, I think there's people who just, they give it's so positive a place, and I think the story of the pump track in Wishaw itself and social track itself is just we had so many people that didn't want that track built. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. And we had mountain bikers not wanting it built, which was, really, it was pretty upsetting to me, because they didn't want. I think they were worried that,
like, from the local area, obviously.
Yeah, some of them were, yeah, and they didn't want it built. I think, if I'm honest, I think it was the jealousy. I think they were really a great experience. Yeah, it was kind of disappointing, but it's so. I think my aspirations for what I want to see it do for young people, especially in areas like Craignick and Wishaw, and I'm really excited to see what might happen in other areas of Scotland that are struggling just now. And COVID's, hammered these places, and I'm really keen to see what happens to the guys and girls who keep it up and going, because it's keeping it there. You need everybody else to be on board, and it's so tough for a lot of these kids. Probably I'm off topic here, I'm sorry, but it's like I've seen it, but I think I'm so emotionally invested in it that I've not seen it enough for me to be happy yet. I've seen so many kids that are struggling. I've seen so many negative stuff.
That's kind of what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about. Just that is like the actual. Sorry, my internet is I don't know if it's mine, or I think it probably is mine. I'm just using the
sorry, it could be mine.
Laptop to my phone. In terms of, like, obviously, we've talked a lot about like the benefit it's had at a community level.
Yeah.
But then at like an individual level, like, what difference does it make for the kids who get into going to the pump track as much as possible, or whatever? What difference does that make to their lives?
Right, can I tell you a big negative and then tell you how?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, please.
Positive, right? So 3 weeks ago, or 5 weeks ago, when you hear this, right? 2 kids from Craignick died in a motorbike accident, right? And typical dirt bike, antisocial behaviour stuff, and then they got a bike that they couldn't ride. They got a 250. They're used to riding a 50, and crashed into a van, dead instantly. And I knew one of these kids from the pump track. Saw him 2 days before it at the pump track. And it was massive. It was such a big deal, and I would get really upset, because I remember back in the 90s when heroin was really big in the area, and there was lots of people dying, either overdoses or getting shot and all that sort of shit. And a lot of them my age at the time, so I was 17, 18, and a lot of these guys the same age, they didn't reach 21. And I thought, man, what's happening to my town again? You know, is this the same shit? And there was another guy that had actually been murdered by one of these lads that died, and he was 50. And I thought, oh, shit's happening again. And I was like, man, I just hate this. And I go to the pump track, and these kids are coming up to me and say, did you hear about that? And I'm like, yeah. And then another kid, and then another kid, and then another kid. And then the first night, 12 kids had come up to me and said to me about this stuff. And I'm talking from like 7-year-old to 17 sort of age group, just coming up to me and talking to me and saying about this stuff. And then it suddenly dawned on me, it's like, and then, you know, the shipping containers that we use for storage covered the murals for these guys. And then I thought, man, something's happening here. These kids have had nobody to talk to about this. They know who these lads were. You know, they knew who they were in the community, but they've actually had a place to come to. And the great thing about mountain biking, and cycling in general, you guys will probably know this. When you're pissed off in life, you just ride your bike harder. And if you've been pissed off and you want to punch a wall, if you just go ride a bike instead, you know, you come back and you don't feel that way anymore. And I think that's one of the things that's happening as well. These kids have been able to jump on a bike, ride the pump track, and just feel a lot better about life. You know, just get that frustration and anger, and probably how I imagine probably some of how I was feeling, like, what the fuck, you know, what's happening here? There's nobody to give a shit, you know? And it was like, you know, 19-year-old laddies should not be fucking dying, you know? It's as simple as that. And I know, and I'm seeing all the failures that have happened in the years, and, you know, I knew the kids, so I'm thinking, you know, what have I done? What could I have done better? What could social track have done better, etc., etc. And then these kids coming up, and so a really negative thing, but then I saw the negative shit's going to happen anyway, right? Whatever it is. But these kids have actually got somewhere to come to and actually talk about that, and actually talk to one another, and talk to us, the guys that they trust, you know, which is a big part of what social track's about. We're pretty good at chatting to folk. We like people. That's, you know, it's the issue I think a lot of other organisations have. They're full of people who like bikes more than people. So it's we probably a 50-50 and 60-40 at least. And so they actually had this chance to come and actually speak to us and say these things and physically demonstrate these things by drawing the murals and stuff like that in the walls. And I was just like, and then as the weeks went on, and obviously and the weeks went on, we were there on a Monday night and giving bikes out and stuff, and it was more of a sort of like high school age group that we were working with. And then the Easter stuff happened, but it's mostly sort of primary school, but they were hurting as well. They knew about it. I mean, we're talking to regulars who are cousins of these two lads that died, you know. In fact, cousins of the three lads that died, and they're coming through and everything. And then as you're actually seeing it, like, so by Friday there, you know, there's 4 weeks have passed, and you're seeing the difference in these kids' face as opposed to right back when that started. You know, not only have they actually done something that's positive and they enjoy, but they've also been able to vent. They've been able to get all that stuff that they don't quite understand. And I don't understand it either. I don't get it. I mean, these three guys loved and hated each other. One of them murdered another one. You know, it's like, I don't understand it. You know, probably over not a huge amount of money, you know, and it was, and all that stuff is happening. But at the end of this, you've seen this massive change where these kids are smiling, you know, whereas they feel happy and they're glad to be there. They're glad to be at the pump track. They're glad to see their pals. And I've seen some amazing stuff that the kids do. I've even seen kids make sure that other kids are getting their dinner that night, you know, and just stuff like that. And I think so there's like stuff that's hard to quantify, actually. You know, how do you write that? How do you say, you know, criminal tragedy that sees young people die, children and how they affect of it? I mean, man, I'd probably take that to uni and, you know, get some people to study that, you know what I mean? It would take some time to do that. And it's just like, I can't explain it. I mean, it is such a massive positive, but I think just being there and just doing a positive thing, and like you're saying, that sort of positive vibe, what Crystal was saying about the positive vibe of Pumptracks. When people are hurting, they'll say things that they probably wouldn't say anywhere else. It's a bit like Cheers, I think. It's a bit like a pub that, people can just go and, everybody's a barman. Yeah. Everybody's a barman and everybody's a customer at a pump track, and they can just chill and talk, and it's, I've even been amazed. I mean, I've name dropped people I've met, like Ali Clarkson and Alex Donaghy and stuff like that, and I've met a few now, through the Red Bull videos and all that sort of stuff, and it's amazing what people will tell you, and that includes them. When you're at a pump track, the things they'll tell you about pump tracks is just this sort of place where people can just go and relax, and it's like a counsellor's sofa, it's just to go and just sort of vent, and you feel free of judgment, and it's only when you try a track and make an arse at it that everybody's going to judge you, or your fear of flyouts. Not guilty, and totally guilty, and that sort of stuff that so yeah, that was a short story long, but,
no, really interesting, really interesting. I'm wondering, what are because you're working with these kids all the time and they're in an environment that will be oftentimes very difficult, and you don't know what kind of situations, I guess, they'll be walking into, like these kids you're talking about. What are the kind of lessons that you try and instill in them, the life lessons that go beyond just the pump track and it it being a fun place for them?
Do you know what? A wee simple one is just about having self-respect, and respecting yourself, and people realizing the pump track's theirs. And one really that me and Neil worked about 100 hours a week for about 18 months, something like that. No pay, just to get this thing built, because I made it sound easy, like the track was built, like there's £250,000 we're going to build this track, yay, man. It was a lot of pushing to get the thing up, because if somebody can't, I said before we even started that I was going to possibly delete when I say about certain councils and whatever. My experience of working with some councils is that if they can get away with not doing a thing, they won't do it. So you need to kick their ass constantly, and you need to accept the fact they'll fucking hate you, and me and Neil have rattled some cages big time. I even, when that lad was murdered, I even turned around and said, see if you'd have kept your money coming to this fucking pump track so that we could be there for their kids, that laddie might be alive. I've said that to people in the council. They didn't like it because it's possibly true, Anyway, so it's life lessons really early on, lots of work, and it really bothered me the first time I was at the track with a bike, with my bike, talking to a kid, and this is before we even really had bikes to give out and stuff, and I've turned around to this kid and I'm talking away and he's like, spat in the track, and I was raging. It was like, how could you disrespect the track like that? Like, that's all the thoughts. And I'm like, man, don't spit the track. And ironically, that came all the way from when I was playing rugby and football. I had coaches that hated it when you spit in the grass, in the pitch. It's like, you play there, you go off the pitch and you spit. You don't spit on the pitch, you play there, And it was like, have respect for where you are. And I think that was a big one for us, and eventually it got to the point where you would hear, "Oh, you don't spit!" You would hear it in the corner somewhere, "Don't spit the track!" And
you think that has a kind of having respect for the track, then that kind of carries to they take that and having respect for themselves as well.
Totally, and it's one of them where it's like you don't need to be proud with a capital P and a negative. You can have pride in yourself that's a positive thing. You can have self-esteem that's a positive thing, and it's the same thing. And I don't know if you saw it, but there was I can't remember if it was a Pink Bike article or a Red Bull article, but it was talking about like the top 10 pump tracks in the world, and Wishaw was number 7, and I think Skelf was 9th. And so it was like Wishaw, I think, was 7th, and you've got to fact check that and go, Dad, it was 6th, get up here. And so it was and it was 7th, and I said that to a kid the other day, and they were like, guys, have a bit of respect. They were throwing their sweet wrappers a bit, and I was like, guys, there's bins everywhere. It took us ages to get the bins. Go use them. And it was like, have some respect for yourself, never mind the track. And they're like, oh, this track's, and I was like, this track's the 7th best in the world. Give us a break. This is one of the best tracks in the world.
So, yeah.
Respect it. And it took a lot of work to get it built, and it was built for you. Respect it. And they're like, oh, okay. And it was probably a wee bit different from when they're at school and just getting shouted at constantly. So it's actually trying to say, well, this is about you.
Yeah,
that learning process of respect, definitely, like, I think that must resonate across all the pump tracks that get built, because we definitely at the Skelf pump track went through those sort of growing pains, and it's not the same community at the Skelf pump track as you guys have in Wishaw. But I remember, the local youth
were some rough kids there, man.
What's that? Sorry?
There's still some rough kids there.
Oh, no, I mean, as in like the sort of the social track community and running the bikes, getting let out, that type of community. Because the kids that I'm about to discuss were throwing stones at everyone, and but there's a group of older riders that are like, no, like, you can't do this. This is, it's like that being taught by someone that they like respect you riding, and then they want to throw stones at you, and it's like this, like, they're like, oh wait, maybe I shouldn't throw stones. Okay, and then before you know it, in a few weeks, they're on a bike with a helmet on and everything. And it's like a total change in them. So yeah, it's really.
It's got culture, hasn't it? Pump tracks have got culture. There's even a language, and there's, people don't go about in their daily life saying drop in, fly out, and burn, but you do at the pump track, so yeah, there's a culture there, and
it's positive.
Yeah, there's definitely like a self-regulating as well. Like, even when the kids that are new to the pump track and they're hating on the littler kids, they get pulled up. It's like, hold on, like, everyone's got to start somewhere. Just because you've learned to jump the jump doesn't give you all the rights in the world now.
Aye. And that's it's cool with that, isn't it, as well, that you can have like there's like a hierarchy, but there's not a hierarchy. It's like, just because you can do a thing doesn't mean it's yours, or doesn't mean that you're any better than someone else. And I think that's the bit as well, where people don't always want to admit it, but if you're a mountain biker, it doesn't mean you're better than a BMXer or a scooter guy or a skater or anything like that. It's like everybody's there. I kind of think the other background that me and Neil have is actually the Glasgow heavy metal scene. We were both promoters in the Glasgow music scene, and both being in bands, and we see a lot of similarities. We see a lot of similarities in the fact that it was like a scene that was a total counterculture, a total alternative culture. And I think that's the thing about pump tracks, is that anybody can go to a pump track. And that's not always the case. Of like, you don't always feel that way. If you had to go to the velodrome, would you feel that way? Maybe you would, but I wouldn't even want to go, because I would feel like, I'm not a stone underweight, so why would I even give it a go? And it's like same with like road bikes, or even, and sometimes I even feel that at trail centres now, and it's I've kind of went back to my roots a little bit. when I go to Glentress, I go with a DJ bike, and I go with a pair of jeans and a check shirt, and my helmet and my gloves are the only bits that look like I'm a mountain biker. I've got a pair of 510s on as well, but it's one of them where it's like I don't go there to, sometimes you see that as well. You worry about, I would really worry about the price of bikes. I really do. It's like, I think it's got, and you hear about that as well, and that sort of, you guys know that. I mean, I've seen your podcast. I've seen your podcast where you talk about just being there on a beat to shit bike, and it doesn't matter because you're having the time of your life, and that's all that matters. How you get, no disrespect to, your sponsorships and all that, because I think that's awesome too. I think that's the other side of it, it's that's also great, and positive destinations. We've been able to get people a couple of sponsorships. We've been able to put people on bikes that generally couldn't afford it. We've got a volunteer just now, Ryan, who's on our profile picture, and 16-year-old kid, and he's riding a Cult BMX. It's 1,100 quid. Wow. And he wouldn't be able to afford, otherwise. But we know how, just the marketing and everything that we can get from that. We know how we can justify that. So there's just that great culture that just seems to gravitate to it. People who don't fit in here, there, or whatever. Pumptracks have just got that sort of, it doesn't matter what you are. You can come along and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's same thing, yeah. I thought for Scotland, guys. I'm sure you've noticed.
It's been great hearing from you. I'm just conscious of the time now, because we're trying to roughly keep these into about an hour, because then more people seem to be able to commit to an hour, but not so much to like an hour and a half or 2 hours. So yeah. I just got one more question for you, Dan. That's quite a big one, and I suppose, I mean, this is, I probably know your answer, but how can we make mountain biking more accessible? Maybe accessible rather. Maybe like mountain biking itself, like Pumptracks are obviously an amazing way to make something that is pretty much mountain biking very accessible. But how can we make mountain biking more accessible, and what do you think people can do in their communities to help, that end?
Well, if they stop changing the wheel size, that'd help. And we might actually get the economy of scale happening with bikes. So the other thing, right, so how do you get more people mountain biking? I think realizing what's in your doorstep. I think also we need to be less judgmental about what people are riding. A great experience where a guy was riding a certain brand of bike and a certain model as well, kind of similar to somebody that you guys will know, right? And he was on a local trail with one of the kids from the pump track who was on a DJ bike, and this guy had come 10th at Derailed Enduro, and this kid in the DJ bike on the local trails, tire buzzed him the whole way. And I think we need to realize it's not about the bike. It's nice to have a nice bike. I'd love to have a classic 70s muscle car out there, but the truth is I've got a bus pass, and an e-bike. And I think we need to be less judgmental about the bike itself and just encourage people to be involved. Mountain biking's awesome. And it's such a huge genre, it's got so many genres within it. It's like the same as me saying about, I was in the Glasgow music scene, in particular the heavy metal stuff. So many different genres of music, and it was one of them where when you start saying all that shit because that's something, you're automatically closing dialogue, So I think that's number one. We need to stop being judgmental about bikes, because at the end of the day, it's not about the bike, and some kid can turn up and actually I actually don't think they're the worst bikes in the world. Apollo do a full rigid mountain bike, and I actually think that that's not the worst bike in the world. I would rather they bought that, the one with the suspension. and they'll go ride their local trails. And some of the kids I know at the pump track will be faster than most guys I know with full bouncers, you know. And so I think that's number one. Number two, in a community point of view, is that it's having that graft. And it's why Social Track exists and does consulting now, because we've been there. We know what it's like. We know all the stuff that they're going to expect. So I think from a community point of view, it's having the desire to actually see people who you normally wouldn't see on a mountain bike. So wee Jimmy, around the corner, that's always getting chased by the police and all that sort of stuff. Well, if you're a group and you've got some bikes, you've managed to get some funding, you've got some bikes, maybe even some of those bikes used to be yours, you know. Maybe you've got a 26-inch wheel bike there that nobody wants to buy off you, but you know it's still a great bike, you know, and all that sort of stuff. And then just say, hey, Jimmy, you know, your group actually says, you know, our group meets on a Wednesday night, you want to come along? And you give Jimmy a bike and give him a shot. He's the one that
needs it the most.
Aye, and I think it's that there's that just it's us being brave enough to actually invite people. It's like you've got to want people to do it, and then you know it's a party that we want everybody to be at, you know, but we've got to want the people to be at it, and we've got to be up for inviting them. And then once you do that, you realise the things, how, you know, the reasons why they can't come to the party. You know, like, oh, they can't afford a bike. Well, I've got a spare one. That's over. You know, if you know, but they can't get to Glentress. Do you need to go to Glentress? You live in Scotland. There's every chance that 5 minutes away from you is some pretty good riding. You know, just like you're saying, being a teenager and riding your local hills. You know, go do that. You know, and you know, if you want to take them to Glentress, do it, Wishaw Mountain Biking Club down and get some funding and pay for a minibus and hire a van and take a bunch of kids down to Glentress and it's great, you know. And I think that's the sort of stuff, is it's finding that community spirit and finding that desire to have that party and get people together and just say, you know, we're here to have fun. And I'm a firm believer that positive things attract positive things, and that's certainly the case with attitudes. You find when you're being positive and you're trying to do something, all these people come out of nowhere that want to see the same thing happen. They want to, and I know so many mountain bikers that really want to. It happens all the time at Pump Track. I'm sure you guys are the same here at a Pump Track. You get the mountain bikers that go, can we not get these guys in mountain bikes? You know, great at Glentress, and I'm one of them. I think some of the kids, I think they would have a great day at Glentress. You know, and it's. And I always think Glentress is the great thing about a trail centre. Not just Glentress, but the good trail centres. The good thing about them is you know that they're consistent. So the same as a Pump Track, it's consistent. There's an element of consistency to it. So you know that it's an element of it's safe, and you know what they can be able to do and what they can't do and all that sort of jazz. And I think that's when once you see that, you're like a lot happier to then take them onto the natural trails, because you know that they'll be able to handle that, you know. Probably not making much sense there, but you know what I mean, when something's type 1 gravel and then you're taking to a kid it's a very similar type of shape, but it's clay, you know, it's completely different thing in how you ride it, you know. So it's a lot easier from a mountain bike leader point of view. It's a lot less stressful to take out somebody brand new on that. But there's so much riding, man. I mean, and it's just getting everybody together and being willing to get people together, and that non-judgmental attitude. You know, somebody turns up in a Halfords bike, who cares, you know. And it's like, the fact of the matter is, it's probably came out of the exact same factory in Taiwan as yours. So it's you know, it's like, so and who cares about what clothes they're wearing? You know, if they get a helmet, cool. Is it cold and they need gloves? Cool, we get a spare set. You know, simple stuff. And it's I
suppose like proactively encouraging it, you know, like a sort of for any mountain biker out there, it's like actually proactively encourage those types of those types of things, those types of people.
Yes. Again, I took 10 minutes longer to say something. It took 10 seconds. But yes, that's your job, though. It's your job as the guy interviewing you to summarize.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Summarize things. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just actively encourage. And there's so many elements. I think there's so many elements about it that are. It's really realizing the elements that don't matter, really don't matter. Do you need a 12-speed system on the bike for this kid to go do that? No.
I suppose as well, I'm just thinking, like, in terms of, I'm thinking of, I partly asked the question, because it's something like I benefited a lot from. I had a teacher at school, did those kinds of like things for free, used to take kids to Glentress, and I was in a thing run by the council, the Edinburgh Sports Academy, and if I look back, there was all these things that I just had this, I owe almost everything to this, like these chances that I had no kind of control over. And now, like, I'm thinking, what can I do to mountain biking is bikes are expensive, as you say, but you can do it on a cheap bike. You can do it on a bike that is quite actually accessible. But and as you say, like, maybe one of the powers that we have as good riders within our community is to be like, if you see a kid on that kind of bike, on a Polo or whatever, be like, that's the person you should actually be most encouraging towards, and make them feel most like you are you belong here as much as anyone else. Not just like, don't bully that kid, but actually like make that kid feel like he's like, you want him there, and that like, or her there.
Yeah, I think that's a good point actually. Is that good riders inspire people? Like when I was saying about people moaning about Crystal and Mark Ducat, it's because they're good, right? Did I say that about you, Crystal? I hope you didn't hear that, right?
You can say that, and I kind of I don't want this to come across as a bit like self-righteous, but when I go to the Edinburgh pump track, it feels quite middle class.
Aye.
When I come to Wishaw, and usually it's me. Usually it's me, and then like a couple of people I maybe drove through with from Edinburgh, and then like just the kids. And I feel bad that I don't go there more, because they're so excited to see something like good riders.
Yeah.
And they're just like, wow. And I remember when I was young and I would see good riders and I was like, whoa. And I just wanted to see that all the time. And I'm sure the kids at Wishaw do, but like, I'm always at Skelf and I just see the same people. And it's like, I should be like, trying to talk to these kids and stuff.
Yeah. We had a great, yeah.
Just to tell them, like, you could, like, because kids always ask us, oh, how do you get this good? And I'm always like, you just practice. Like, that's literally just all I've done. I've just practiced. Just have fun and practice. And I hope that, in 10 years' time, I'll see the kids that I did say that to in Skelf, most likely, and they've done that. And it's
I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen some awesome stuff, right? But I remember the first time I met Claudio was actually at Skelf, Claudio Colori, and he obviously wins Velo Solutions and designs these tracks. And I saw him, and he was, I can't remember who the rider was, South American rider. I can't remember. He was riding for Scott at the time, and out of this Scott riders he took, he was the one whose background was actually BMX. So like all the big downhillers, their backgrounds generally, Aaron Gwynn, Troy Brosnan, Danny Hart, all their background was all BMX, and racing BMX, and because if you can pump a bike, any bike, you'll go faster, basically. And this guy, I can't remember his name, really annoying me, and he was trying to do a 360 in one of the spines at Skelf, and some kid who was about 12, he just walked up, and maybe this is part of our accessibility thing as well. Somebody just comes up and was, "Can I short your bike, mate?" And he went, "I no bother." Well, obviously they said aye. He said yes.
Mm-hmm.
Give him the bike, and the kid took out the fag, flipped it, and got in the bike. And this guy had been casing this 360 spine transfer like every time, 12 attempts, and this kid was like, "Yeah, show your bike." I ain't bother. Doof, 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 whoosh, doof, first time.
Wow.
Right, does this 360 spine transfer. Goes back up and goes, gives me his bike back. Shite that bike. And it was, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And it's, Chris Kyle, the BMXer as well. He done a thing where it was like a corporate day kind of thing with Red Bull, and it was like the marketing guys, and we hired them out bikes and stuff, and he was at the pump track, and I was so worried that those kids that you're talking about, Crystal, at Wishy Wishaw would totally piss them all off and all that sort of stuff. I was really worried about it. And so I went down after whatever I'd been doing that day, and Chris Kyle say about Donaghy and stuff. And then lo and behold was the kid who's can be a total pain in the ass. And he's on Chris Kyle's bike, right? And Chris is watching this, and he goes up and he does this massive transfer, absolutely huge, man. And he's about 6 feet in the air. This kid, he's 11, 6 feet in the air. He just totally bombs right into this thing, man. And it's like perfect. And that way, something's good, and it's not because you see it, but you hear it. How little noise there is, so whether it's BMX or mountain bike, it's the exact same. It's what I love about Aaron Gwynn. Aaron Gwynn, when you see him race, it's like, I'm Greg Minnaar. There's like nothing happening, It's so smooth, and this kid was the exact same, got it like perfect. And Chris Kyle turned to me and went, I was never that good at that age, ever. I just know I was about 15 before I could do something like that, 16 before I could do something like that. It's like, that's scary. And that's the bit, like, how do you get that to where Chris Kyle, to replace Chris Kyle? And I know, all credit to Chris. Chris is trying to figure that one out, whenever I've met him. And I've had different discussions with different people talking about that. And I was like, I don't know. Some of these kids' their lives are so hectic that actually, see if we just make these kids happy, that's a result, in itself. Never mind them being, some girl becoming the next Rachel Atherton or whatever. It's not just about that. And I'm always a big one about, for me, it's just all that accessibility and that enthusiasm. I get what you're saying, Crystal, about being there and being an example. It makes such a difference. It totally does. But you don't need to feel bad about that.
No, I don't feel bad. I just when I'm there, I'm just like almost taken aback by it, like, because I remember even this was one of the first times I went to Wishaw, and like I didn't really know Wishaw. I just obviously came and was like, oh, this is definitely like a rough part of town, sort of like when I got there, and like the kids were like, oh man, you speak funny, man. Where are you from? And I was like, oh, like 40 minutes away. And they're like, oh, Edinburgh, I've never been there before. Like, it's like, and I was like, I just didn't expect that, basically. And I was just like, I don't know how to like articulate it, but I was just like, if I can, just by going once, and people are like, oh, so you can just like go to a pump track there, and it's not even that far away. It's like, or you can get good at this, not just in Wishaw, you can get good at this in other places. Yes. It's just, I don't know, it's hard to articulate it, but it was just quite...
You're opening the world, man. You're showing them more of the world is what you're doing. You're showing them a possibility of something that's more than just right in front of them. You're giving them, I guess, if you went all religious about it, whatever, you're almost giving them faith that there's something else out there than what they're seeing in their day-to-day life. It's the same as anybody that wants to do anything and do it well. I'm a guitar player. There's more guitars in my life than there is bikes, but it means I'm a guitar player. I had my heroes. I wanted to be like them. And there's an element of faith that if I put in the work, I will be better. And it's the same with you guys when you're racing and whatever. There's an element of faith. You guys will have had your heroes, whether whoever that was, Steve Pete or whoever that was. and it was you have your heroes and what inspires you and what you aspire to, and I think that there's an element of how do you take that when you're the person who inspires, I think it's just probably the rule is don't be a dick about it, and help them out, and it's definitely one of them. But I think that it's just chatting here about Skelf is making. I said the other day, I was thinking in my head, if the Red Bull race happens, I've got a couple of coaches I would like to see race at that race. A couple of volunteers would like to see race at that race. And I was looking at the kids and I thought, man, they would just love a day out. They loved going to Cathkin for the race. When I went to the Cathkin race, they absolutely loved it. And we've always talked about you just need to get them to these places. It's a pity that Hoyk is just hard to get to from anywhere.
So far.
Even it's like 2 hours from anywhere. And that track is a beauty. Have you ridden Hoyk?
I've been there once and it was absolutely rammed. So to say I've ridden it would be a bit of a lie in a way. But it was...
I was there for 4 hours and managed 2 laps.
Yeah, but it was amazing to see so many kids there, like I was blown away by it. It was incredible.
And so many rough kids. That was the bit I was really impressed with. So many rough kids, because you totally you get tired of seeing all the kids that are there, and like their parents have took them there and they want to show off how much they've spent on bikes and their kids. You're like, all right, whatever. I shouldn't probably be against those people, but they piss me off. And I should be more accepting to those people. I should be inviting those people at the party too, but I don't want to be at a party with them. So, but there's a dude, I can't remember his name. Do you know that way where you go to Pumptracks and you go, you meet different people riding, you can't remember their name, but you remember what bike they ride and you remember their tattoos. And so I know there's a guy that rides an NS that's got a set of Pike Ultimates on his bike. I think it's from him and Alethan, and I've bumped into him a few times. I bumped into him when I was at Hoyk, and I've bumped into him. He's been at Wishaw before as well, and I've met him at Skelf. I can't remember his name. Oh, that's annoying me. He's rode downhill and stuff like that. That's annoying me. But he's like,
I don't know. It could be Ross Swinton or.
That sounds about right. Yeah, is he from Inners?
Yeah, he's from Inners. Yeah.
I think that's who it is, man. Yeah. And I saw him do some crazy stuff when I was at Hoyk, man. And it was awesome, though. I mean, it was great. It was entertaining, but I remember seeing him. He must have been about 8 foot in the air, man. And just
got a good boost on him. Yeah, he's got a good boost.
Aye. And you saw it, man. And you seen him in the air shitting it. He was just, it was like, woof, and he went sheet white mid-air. It was just that look of, oh, fuck, It's like, totally maxed out the fork, the whole bit, it was just like, and I was talking about smooth, it was just dun-dun, and it was like, everybody just went, oh, 100 people just gasped all at the one time, and it was, I think that's the cool thing about Pumptracks as well, was that there's an entertainment value to the whole thing, and it's like there's always, you got to give it to Velo Solutions. They make this thing that just you can push and push and push and push, and whether that's doing the smallest technical thing or like you're talking about, is it Ross?
Ross, yeah.
Ross. I mean, you're talking about Ross. I mean, doing some absolutely fucking bonkers. It's where everybody's like shit, 999 straight away before it's even landed the thing, So it's or somebody who just manages to, or do their first drop in, and I think that's all the stuff that's pretty cool,
It's brilliant to see you. It's been amazing. It's been amazing listening to you, Dan. Really interesting to hear about Wishaw Pumptrack. Obviously, how you actually got it going, the positive impact it's had, some of the challenges other people like yourselves are going to face, and trying to get similar things off the ground. And it's been amazing. I think Wishaw is such a incredible example that that you've set to everyone else doing something similar, and a lot of other Pumptracks in the community. And you've shown what an amazing thing they can be. So it's been really great to hear from you, and thank you so much for for being a part of our podcast. I don't know.
Thanks, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hello, welcome to the outro. I've just been recording that intro you saw at the beginning for about half an hour. I was told I looked disheveled right before I started. And I can't help but agree. I do look disheveled. That was my girlfriend, Annalise. There's nothing that much I can do about it. We've been in lockdown. Obviously, the hairdressers have been closed for 4 or 5 months. I was kind of thinking that I looked cool. You said disheveled.
It was your eyes. They looked wide.
Oh, it's fine. It's just my eyes that look disheveled. Anyway, and sometimes those intros just take a really long time to record. The outros, obviously, as you know, they're a little bit more relaxed. I don't need to know things for the outro. I don't need to put words in order. And I don't need to make them particularly concise. You've already seen the episode. If you are still listening, you have no one to blame but yourself. So there's not really much more to say in this outro. Oh, there is. There's actually something kind of important. We have got 2 more of these virtual podcasts. So we've obviously got this one we just released today. And we've got another one next week that we'll be releasing next Thursday at 6 o'clock. After that, we're going to take a short break from the Derailed podcasts. We're going to be recording quite a few of them. There's a lot going on, and with the Content Collective, there's a lot of content going to be released in the next few weeks. And it's just a little bit too much for us to do both at the moment. So we're going to be taking a sort of 2-3 week break from the Derailed series, but then we'll be back with a lot more of the Trail series. We've got some really great guests lined up, so stay tuned for those ones. Thank you so much for listening to this one, and we will see you next week. Thanks a lot for watching. Oh, and subscribe and comment and like. You already know the deal. That you've actually been doing a really good job of subscribing recently. Can't thank you all enough. We really do appreciate it. But obviously, those of you that haven't yet subscribed, you should subscribe at this point. Thanks a lot. See you next week.